The burgundy leather couch in Vanna's friend's living room felt like a throne for people I'd never belong with. Crystal wine glasses clinked around me, filled with bottles that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. The conversation buzzed about stock portfolios, European vacations, and legal cases worth millions. I sat there in my best button-down shirt, the one Vanna had picked out for me 3 years ago, watching my wife hold court like she owned the room. Vanna Trasker looked stunning that night. Her auburn hair caught the chandelier light perfectly, and her black cocktail dress hugged her figure in ways that reminded me why I'd fallen for her 15 years ago. She laughed at something Marcus, the investment banker, said, throwing her head back with genuine delight. The sound used to make my heart skip. Now it just made me wonder what joke I'd missed. "Marlow, you're awfully quiet tonight," said Jennifer, the host. She owned some boutique marketing firm downtown and treated me like an interesting zoo exhibit whenever we met. "How's the electrical supply business?" "Keeping the lights on," I replied, raising my beer bottle. It was the only thing in the house that didn't come with a French name I couldn't pronounce. The group chuckled politely, the way people do when they're not sure if you're being clever or just simple. Vanna shot me a look that said, "Please don't embarrass me," which had become her default expression around her new crowd. 3 years ago, when Vanna started at Brennan, Koss & Associates, these people didn't exist in our world. Back then, we'd spend Friday nights at Murphy's Tavern, playing pool and arguing about baseball. She'd wear jeans and my old college sweatshirt, and we'd laugh until our sides hurt. Now she networked at wine tastings and spoke in legal jargon that made my head spin. "Vanna was just telling us about the Henderson merger," Marcus continued, leaning closer to my wife than necessary. "Brilliant strategy on the liability clauses." I watched Vanna beam under his praise, her cheeks flushing pink. She'd been working late on that case for months, coming home after I'd already eaten dinner alone and watched whatever game was on. When I'd ask about her day, she'd wave me off with complaints about how I wouldn't understand the complexities. "That's my girl," I said, standing up and moving toward her. Always the smartest person in the room. The wine had made me sentimental, or maybe just stupid. I leaned down to kiss her cheek, the way husbands do at parties when they're proud of their wives. It seemed natural, automatic, like breathing. Vanna pulled away so fast you'd think I'd tried to bite her. "I'd rather kiss my dog than you," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The room went silent for exactly 2 seconds before erupting in laughter. Not uncomfortable chuckles, but full-throated amusement, like she'd delivered the punchline to the evening's best joke. Marcus nearly spit out his wine. Jennifer covered her mouth but couldn't hide her grin. Even the quiet accountant in the corner cracked a smile. I stood there, bent over slightly from the attempted kiss, feeling every eye in the room measuring my humiliation. The laughter echoed off the vaulted ceilings, bouncing around like pinballs in my skull. My face burned, but not from embarrassment. Something colder had settled in my chest, something that felt like clarity. "That's funny," I said, straightening up. My voice carried that flat tone I used when dealing with difficult customers, the one that made people pay attention. "Really funny." I pulled out my phone, taking my time to unlock it while the room watched. The laughter had died down, but the smirks remained. Vanna looked pleased with herself, basking in her friend's approval like a cat in sunshine. "Since we're sharing amusing stories," I continued, opening our shared cloud folder, "I've got one that might interest everyone. Especially you, Marcus." "What are you doing?" Vanna asked, her voice carrying the first note of concern I'd heard from her all evening. "Just want everyone to stay quiet for a minute," I said, connecting my phone to the smart TV that dominated the living room. "This is really worth hearing." The audio file loaded with a soft click. I'd recorded it 2 weeks earlier, standing in our kitchen while Vanna talked on the phone in the next room. She'd been speaking louder than usual, probably because the connection was bad, and every word had come through crystal clear. Her voice filled the room through the surround sound system. "Marcus, I need you to process that loan application we discussed. Yes, Marlow approved it as guarantor. He's excited about the investment opportunity. The electrical supply business is doing better than expected." Marcus set down his wine glass. His face had gone pale under his salon tan. The recording continued. "I'll send over the signed documents tonight. He's so trusting, he barely read them. Men and their egos, right? He thinks he's making some big business move." I paused the playback and looked around the room. The smirks had vanished, replaced by expressions ranging from confusion to dawning horror. Vanna stood frozen, her mouth slightly open, like she was trying to catch words that wouldn't come. "Now here's the really interesting part," I said, pulling up the document folder on the TV screen. The signed guarantor page Marcus received. The form appeared in high definition, my signature clearly visible at the bottom. Except it wasn't my signature. Close, but not quite right. The M in Marlow was too round, the R too sharp. I'd been signing my name for 42 years, and I knew every loop and curve. "Marcus," I said, turning to face the investment banker who was now sweating despite the air conditioning, "as a financial professional, what's your expert opinion on this signature?" He didn't answer. Couldn't answer, probably. His career depended on spotting financial irregularities, and he'd just been caught facilitating one. "Let me help," I continued, pulling up a photo of my actual signature from a recent contract. "This is how I really sign documents. Notice the differences?" Jennifer, the marketing expert, had gone completely silent. The accountant was staring at his shoes. The room felt like a courtroom where the verdict had already been decided. "I'm emailing this to you right now, Marcus," I said, typing quickly on my phone. "And copying the loan department at First National. They should probably see this." My phone buzzed immediately. Marcus's phone started ringing. "That'll be the bank," I said. "They're very efficient when it comes to potential fraud cases." Vanna finally found her voice. "Marlow, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I cut her off. "You forged my signature to guarantee a loan I never approved. That's called fraud, and it assigns all liability to the person who submitted the false documents. That would be you." Marcus answered his phone with shaking hands. I could hear the bank representative's voice through the speaker, asking him to come in first thing Monday morning to discuss irregularities in the loan application. "The account is frozen pending investigation," the voice continued. "We'll need to speak with Mr. Trasker as well, since his signature appears to have been falsified." Vanna lunged for my phone, but I stepped back smoothly. "I wouldn't," I said. "Tampering with evidence just makes things worse." The room had erupted in whispered conversations. Jennifer was asking someone to leave. The accountant was explaining to his wife why they needed to go immediately. Marcus was still on the phone, his voice getting higher with each word. "The clause is very clear," I announced to the room, reading from the loan documents still displayed on the TV. "Any fraudulent submissions result in immediate liability transfer to the submitting party, with potential criminal charges pending investigation." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Someone had called the police, probably Jennifer, trying to salvage what was left of her dinner party. I finished my beer and set the empty bottle on the coffee table right next to a crystal vase that probably cost more than my truck payment. "Well," I said, looking around at the faces staring back at me. "This has been educational. Thanks for the hospitality, Jennifer. The wine was excellent even if I couldn't pronounce it." Vanna was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in black streams. "Marlow, please, we can fix this. It was just a mistake." "The only mistake," I said, heading for the door, "was thinking I was too stupid to notice." The police cars pulled up as I reached my truck. 2 officers got out, looking confused about what exactly they were responding to. I nodded to them politely. "Evening, officers. I believe you'll want to speak with the folks inside about some financial irregularities." I'll be happy to provide a statement, but right now I need to get home. Early day tomorrow. I drove away slowly, watching the flashing lights fade in my rearview mirror. My phone was already buzzing with calls from Vanna, but I let them go to voicemail. 15 years of marriage, and it had taken exactly 15 minutes to end it. The house felt different when I walked through the door, quieter maybe, or just more honest. I sat in my recliner, the one Vanna always complained about because it didn't match the living room decor, and tried to process what had just happened. My wife had committed fraud using my identity. She'd humiliated me in front of her friends, treating me like some embarrassing relative she had to tolerate. And when I'd exposed her, she'd tried to play the victim. But the strangest part was how calm I felt. No rage, no heartbreak, just a cold certainty that my old life was over. The question now was what came next. I picked up my phone and scrolled through the missed calls. 12 from Vanna, 3 from numbers I didn't recognize, probably her friends trying to do damage control. There was also a text from my brother Liam. Heard about tonight. You okay? Liam ran the auto shop on the other side of town, the place where I'd learned to fix things with my hands instead of just talking about them. He'd never liked Vanna's new crowd, said they made her think she was better than where she came from. I'm fine, I texted back. Better than fine. My phone rang again. This time it was Coach Baines from the boxing gym where I'd been working out for the past 6 months. Vanna had mocked that too, said I was going through some kind of midlife crisis. Marlow, you crazy bastard! Coach's gravelly voice came through the speaker. Half the town's talking about what happened at Jennifer Morrison's place. You really nail your wife for fraud. The evidence speaks for itself, I said. Good for you. Most guys would have just taken it, let her walk all over them. You coming in tomorrow? Wouldn't miss it. Bring your anger. We'll put it to good use. After he hung up, I sat in the silence of my house and tried to remember the last time Vanna and I had been happy together. Really happy. Not just going through the motions. It had been years, maybe since before she started law school, back when she still laughed at my jokes and didn't correct my grammar. The woman who'd pulled away from my kiss tonight wasn't the same person I'd married. Maybe she'd changed, or maybe I'd just finally seen who she really was. Either way, that chapter was closed. I walked upstairs to our bedroom and looked around at the expensive furniture, the art prints Vanna had chosen, the walk-in closet full of clothes I couldn't afford. None of it felt like mine anymore. It felt like a museum exhibit, how the other half lives. My phone buzzed with another call from Vanna. This time I answered. Marlow, thank God. Where are you? We need to talk. No, I said simply. We don't. You don't understand what you've done. My career, my reputation, your career built on forging documents, your reputation for fraud. I think I understand perfectly. It wasn't fraud. It was just, I was trying to help us, to make an investment that would, using my name without my permission. That's the definition of fraud, Vanna. You should know that, being a lawyer and all. She was crying again, but it sounded different now. Desperate instead of hurt. Please, we can fix this. I'll pay back the loan. I'll explain to everyone that it was a misunderstanding. The only thing I'm interested in fixing, I said, is my life, starting tomorrow. I hung up and turned off the phone. Whatever came next, it would happen on my terms, not hers. The house settled around me with small creaks and sighs, the sounds of a place that had seen too much and was ready for change. I sat there in the dark, planning my next move, and for the first time in years, I felt like myself again. I woke up at 5:30, same as always, but the house felt different in the gray dawn light. Vanna's side of the bed was empty, the sheets still tucked tight from yesterday morning. She hadn't come home. Part of me wondered where she'd spent the night, but mostly I felt relieved. The coffee maker gurgled to life while I checked my phone. 17 missed calls, 23 text messages, and 4 voicemails. Word travels fast in a town like ours, especially when it involves public humiliation and potential criminal charges. The first voicemail was from Vanna, recorded at 2 in the morning. "Marlow, I'm staying at Jennifer's tonight. We need to discuss this situation like adults. What you did was cruel and unnecessary. Call me." The second was from my daughter Sophie, calling from her college dorm 3 states away. "Dad, what the hell happened? Mom called crying about some party and police and fraud charges. Are you insane? Call me back immediately." I deleted the rest without listening. Whatever explanations or accusations they contained could wait. I had more pressing concerns, like figuring out how to rebuild a life I'd apparently been sleepwalking through for years. The electrical supply store opened at 7, which gave me an hour to think. I'd built that business from nothing, starting with a loan from the local bank and a rented warehouse that leaked when it rained. 15 years later, I employed 8 people and supplied contractors across 3 counties. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Unlike everything else in my life, apparently. My phone rang as I was getting dressed. Liam's name flashed on the screen. "You're up early," I said. Couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about last night. His voice carried that careful tone he used when he was trying not to take sides. "Vanna called me around midnight. She's pretty upset." I imagine she is. Fraud charges tend to upset people. "Come on, Marlow. You know she didn't mean any harm. She was probably just trying to help with the business, maybe surprise you. By forging my signature? That's some surprise?" Liam sighed. "Look, I'm not defending what she did, but destroying her in front of all her friends? That was harsh, even for you." "Harsh?" I paused, one arm through my shirt sleeve. She told a room full of people she'd rather kiss her dog than me. But I'm the harsh one? That was just... You know how she gets when she's had wine. She didn't mean it. She meant every word, and I meant every word of my response. So what now? You're really going to let this destroy your marriage? I finished buttoning my shirt and looked at myself in the mirror. Same face I'd had for 42 years, but something in the eyes had changed. They looked harder, more focused. "The marriage destroyed itself," I said. "I just provided the documentation." After I hung up, I drove through town toward the store, taking the long way past Murphy's Tavern and the old movie theater where Vanna and I had our first date. The morning was crisp, with that October bite that meant winter was coming whether you were ready or not. The electrical supply warehouse sat on the industrial side of town, surrounded by auto shops and small manufacturing plants. Not pretty, but honest. I'd always liked that about this part of town. People here fix things instead of just talking about them. My manager, Pete Kowalski, was already there when I arrived, unloading a delivery truck with 2 of the younger guys. Pete had worked for me for 8 years, ever since he'd gotten laid off from the plant. He was reliable, competent, and had never once made me feel stupid for not having a college degree. "Morning, boss," he called out. "Heard you had an interesting evening." News travels fast. "My wife was at that party, Jennifer Morrison's thing. She said you really stuck it to them fancy folks." I helped him carry a box of junction boxes into the warehouse. Just cleared up some misunderstandings. "Good for you. About time somebody called out their nonsense." Pete set down his box and looked at me seriously. "But you might want to know, there's been some talk. About the business, I mean." "What kind of talk?" "Vanna's been telling people you're in financial trouble, that the store's failing, that's why she had to get involved with investments and such. Some of our contractors are asking questions." I felt that cold clarity settle over me again, the same feeling from last night, when everything became crystal clear. "Is that so?" "Yeah. Jimi Hendrix called this morning, wanted to know if his account was secure. Had to reassure him we're solid." "We are solid. Better than solid. Pull the books, Pete. I want to see exactly how solid we are." While Pete gathered the financial records, I walked through the warehouse, taking inventory of what I'd built. Rows of electrical supplies, organized and cataloged, representing relationships with suppliers and customers I'd cultivated over years. This wasn't some failing business that needed rescue through fraudulent loans. This was a success story that someone had been deliberately undermining. "Here's the last 6 months," Pete said, spreading ledgers across my desk. "Want to tell me what I'm looking for?" "Discrepancies. Anything that doesn't match what we actually sold or ordered." It took an hour to find the first irregularity, but once we knew what to look for, the pattern became obvious. Vanna had been accessing the business accounts, transferring small amounts to cover personal expenses. Nothing huge, nothing that would trigger automatic alerts, but it added up. Over 18 months, she'd skimmed nearly $15,000. "This is embezzlement," Pete said quietly. "This is my wife thinking she's smarter than everyone else." My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. "Dad, I'm driving home. We need to talk face to face. This is insane." I stared at the message for a long moment. Sophie was 19, smart as a whip, and completely devoted to her mother. She'd grown up watching Vanna transform from small-town girl to sophisticated professional, and she'd bought into the narrative that education and ambition were the only things that mattered. "Take the afternoon off, Pete," I said. "I've got family business to handle." "You sure? We've got the Morrison job delivery." "Handle it however you think best. You've been running this place better than I have anyway." I drove home through the center of town, past the courthouse where Vanna worked, past the high school where Sophie had been valedictorian, past all the landmarks of a life that suddenly felt like someone else's story. The house was still empty when I arrived, but Vanna's car was in the driveway. I found her in the kitchen, still wearing last night's dress, looking like she'd aged 5 years in 12 hours. "We need to talk," she said, without looking up from her coffee cup. "I'm listening." "What you did last night was unforgivable. You humiliated me in front of my colleagues, destroyed my professional reputation, and probably cost me my job, all over a simple misunderstanding." I sat down across from her at the kitchen table where we'd eaten thousands of meals together, where we'd planned Sophie's birthday parties and discussed vacation destinations we'd never quite managed to afford. "Simple misunderstanding," I repeated. "Is that what we're calling fraud now?" "It wasn't fraud. I was trying to help. That investment opportunity could have doubled our money, set us up for retirement." "Our money? You mean the 15,000 you've been stealing from the business?" Her face went white. "I wasn't stealing. I was borrowing. For household expenses, things we needed." "Things like what? The designer handbags? The spa weekends with your friends? The wine that costs more than my employees make in a day?" "I was going to pay it back." "When? After you bankrupted my business to fund your lifestyle?" She started crying again, but these weren't the desperate tears from last night. These were calculated, designed to make me feel guilty for being unreasonable. "I never meant for any of this to happen," she said. "I just wanted us to have nice things, to be respected in this town." "Is that so wrong?" "Respect isn't something you buy, Vanna. It's something you earn." "Easy for you to say. You're content to stay in this little bubble forever, never growing, never changing. Some of us have bigger ambitions." "Ambitions that require forging documents and stealing money?" She slammed her coffee cup down, sloshing liquid across the table. "I was trying to build something, to make us more than just another blue-collar family scraping by. But you never supported any of it. You just sat there in your little warehouse, content to be ordinary." "Ordinary," I said. "That's what this is really about, isn't it? You're embarrassed by ordinary." "I'm embarrassed by settling, by accepting mediocrity when we could have so much more. We had more. We had honesty. We had trust. We had a partnership. You traded all of that for what? Approval from people who don't even like you?" The front door slammed, and Sophie's voice echoed through the house. "Mom? Dad? What the hell is going on here?" She appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking like a younger version of her mother, but with my stubborn chin and direct stare. She'd driven 4 hours to get here, probably breaking several speed limits along the way. "Sophie, honey," Vanna started, switching to her maternal voice. "Your father and I are just working through some issues." "Issues? Mom, half my friends are texting me about some video of you getting arrested. The other half are asking if Dad really caught you stealing money." "I wasn't arrested," Vanna said quickly. "And I wasn't stealing. This is all a big misunderstanding that your father has blown completely out of proportion." Sophie looked between us, trying to read the situation. She'd always been good at that, picking up on undercurrents and unspoken tensions. It came from growing up in a house where the adults had been pretending everything was fine for years. "Dad?" she said. "Your version?" I looked at my daughter, this young woman I'd raised to value honesty and integrity, and realized I had a choice. I could minimize what had happened, smooth things over, try to preserve some version of the family we'd pretended to be. Or I could tell her the truth and let her make her own decisions. "Your mother forged my signature on loan documents," I said. "She's been taking money from the business without permission. When I confronted her about it in front of her friends, she tried to make me look like the villain." Sophie sat down heavily in the chair between us. "Mom, is that true? It's more complicated than... Is it true?" Vanna's shoulders sagged. "The signature thing was a mistake. I thought he'd approve the loan if I explained it properly, and the money from the business was for household expenses. I was going to replace it." "So yes," Sophie said flatly. "It's true." "Sophie, you have to understand. I was trying to improve our situation, to give us opportunities, by lying and stealing, by taking initiative, by refusing to accept that this is as good as it gets." Sophie looked around the kitchen, taking in the granite countertops, the stainless steel appliances, the view of the backyard where she'd played as a child. "What exactly was wrong with how we lived?" she asked. "Nothing was wrong," I said. "It just wasn't enough for your mother." "That's not fair," Vanna protested. "I wanted more for us, for you, Sophie. I wanted you to see that we could be more than just small-town ordinary." "I liked small-town ordinary," Sophie said quietly. "I liked having parents who were honest and hard-working and didn't pretend to be something they weren't." "You can't mean that. You're in college now, you've seen what's possible." "I've seen what's possible when people work hard and earn what they have. What you did isn't earning anything. It's just taking." Vanna stared at our daughter like she'd been slapped. "I can't believe you're taking his side." "I'm not taking sides. I'm just trying to understand how my mother became someone who thinks fraud is acceptable if it gets her what she wants." The silence that followed felt like a physical presence in the room. Outside, a neighbor was mowing his lawn, the sound of normal Saturday afternoon life continuing while ours fell apart. "So what happens now?" Sophie asked. "Now," I said, "your mother and I figure out how to untangle 15 years of marriage, and you decide what kind of relationship you want with each of us going forward." "I want my parents back," Sophie said. "The ones who taught me right from wrong. The ones who didn't lie to each other, or steal, or humiliate each other in public." "Those people still exist," I said. "At least one of them does." Vanna stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I don't have to listen to this. You've already poisoned her against me, turned my own daughter into another judge and jury." "I didn't turn her into anything. I just told her the truth." "Your version of the truth. The documented, evidence-based version, the kind that holds up in court." She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "I'm staying at Jennifer's until we can discuss this rationally. When you're ready to work on solutions instead of just assigning blame, call me." After she left, Sophie and I sat in the kitchen, listening to the house settle around us. "Are you okay, Dad?" "I'm better than I've been in years, actually. How are you?" "Confused, disappointed, worried about what comes next." "What comes next is we figure out how to move forward. Honestly, this time." She nodded, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. Her world had just shifted on its axis, and she was trying to find her balance. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "How long have you known? About the money? About the lying?" I suspected for a while that something was off, but I didn't have proof until recently. "Why didn't you say anything sooner?" I thought about that for a moment, trying to give her an honest answer. Because I kept hoping I was wrong. Because it was easier to pretend everything was fine than to face the truth. Because I loved the person I thought your mother was, even after she'd become someone else. And now I love her enough to stop enabling her, even if that means ending our marriage. Sophie reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm sorry, Dad. This sucks for everyone." "Yeah," I said. "It really does." But as I sat there with my daughter, in the honest silence of a house where the pretending had finally stopped, I realized that sometimes the end of one thing was just the beginning of something better. Monday morning brought a phone call that changed everything. I was at the store, going through inventory with Pete, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Brennan, Koss & Associates, Vanna's law firm. "Mr. Trasker, this is Robert Brennan. I think we need to have a conversation." Robert Brennan was the senior partner, the man whose name was first on the letterhead. I'd met him twice at company functions, both times feeling like he was evaluating whether I was worthy of breathing the same air as his employees. "About what?" "About your wife's employment status and some irregularities that have come to our attention. Can you come in this afternoon?" "I'll be there at 3. The law offices occupied the top floor of the newest building downtown, all glass and steel and imported marble. The receptionist, a young woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine, directed me to a conference room where Brennan waited with 2 other partners I didn't recognize. "Mr. Trasker, thank you for coming. I'll get straight to the point. We've received some disturbing information about your wife's conduct, both professional and personal. We need to understand your involvement, if any." "What kind of conduct?" Brennan slid a folder across the polished table. "Financial irregularities on several client accounts, unauthorized access to firm resources, and now this situation with the forged loan documents." I opened the folder and found copies of bank statements, expense reports, and email printouts. The pattern was immediately clear. Vanna had been using firm accounts to cover personal expenses, billing clients for work that was never performed, and skimming money from settlement funds. "How long has this been going on?" "We're still investigating, but it appears to date back at least 18 months, possibly longer." "And you're just discovering it now?" One of the other partners, a thin man with nervous eyes, spoke up. "Your wife was very clever about covering her tracks. Small amounts, different accounts, always with plausible explanations. It might have continued indefinitely if not for the attention drawn by Saturday night's incident." "What's my involvement supposed to be?" "That's what we're trying to determine," Brennan said. "Some of the irregularities involve your business accounts. We need to know if you were aware of her activities." I thought about the $15,000 she'd taken from my store, the forged signature, the lies she'd told about our financial situation. "I was not aware," I said. "In fact, I was a victim of those activities." "Can you prove that?" "I can prove that my signature was forged. I can prove that money was taken from my accounts without authorization. I can prove that she lied to financial institutions using my name." Brennan exchanged glances with his partners. "Mr. Trasker, we're going to be conducting a full investigation. We may need your cooperation. You'll have it. And we're going to have to terminate your wife's employment, effective immediately." I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Vanna had worked hard to get that job, had been proud of her success there. But she'd thrown it all away for what? Designer handbags and wine that impressed people who didn't really care about her? "Does she know yet?" "We're meeting with her this afternoon. We wanted to speak with you first." I left the law office feeling like I'd just witnessed the controlled demolition of someone's life. Vanna had built her new identity around that job, around being a successful professional who moved in sophisticated circles. Without it, what was left? My phone rang as I reached my truck. Liam's name flashed on the screen. "Hey brother, got a minute? What's up? Can you come by the shop? There's something we need to discuss." Liam's auto shop sat on a corner lot that had seen better days, surrounded by chain-link fence and filled with cars in various states of repair. He'd bought it 5 years ago from old Mike Torino, who'd run it since the 1970s. Liam had modernized the equipment, but kept the honest, no-nonsense approach that made customers trust him. I found him in the garage, working under the hood of a pickup truck that looked older than both of us combined. "This better be important," I said. "I've had a long day." He straightened up, wiping his hands on a rag that had seen too many oil changes. "It's about Vanna." "What about her?" "She came by this morning, pretty upset about what happened at the law firm." "You know about that already?" "Small town, Marlow. Word gets around fast." He tossed the rag aside and looked at me seriously. "She's talking about fighting back, claiming you set her up, that you've been planning this for months." "Set her up how?" "Says you've been documenting everything, building a case against her. Says you recorded her phone calls, went through her personal files, maybe even planted evidence." I laughed, but there wasn't much humor in it. "The only thing I planted was a recording device in my own kitchen. Everything else she did to herself." That's what I told her. But she's not thinking straight right now. She's scared, angry, and looking for someone to blame. "Let me guess. I'm the obvious target." "She's also talking about taking you for everything in the divorce, the house, the business, Sophie's college fund. Says you owe her for destroying her career. Her career destroyed itself. I just provided the documentation." Liam leaned against the workbench, studying my face. "You're different. You know that? Since Saturday night, it's like you're a completely different person. Maybe I'm just finally being myself instead of pretending to be who she wanted me to be." "And who is that?" "Someone who doesn't let people walk all over him. Someone who fights back when he's been wronged." "Be careful, Marlow. Fighting back is one thing. But if you push too hard, you might not like what pushes back." I was about to ask what he meant when my phone rang. Sophie's name appeared on the screen. "Dad, where are you? I'm at the house and Mom's here with some lawyer. They want to talk to you about reaching an amicable settlement." "What kind of lawyer?" "Divorce lawyer, I think. Some guy in an expensive suit who keeps talking about protecting Mom's interests." "Tell them I'll be there in 20 minutes. I hung up and looked at Liam. "Looks like the fight's coming to me." "Marlow, listen. Whatever you're planning, whatever you think you need to prove, just remember that Vanna's still Sophie's mother. Don't do anything that's going to hurt your daughter." "I'm not the one hurting Sophie. I'm the one telling her the truth." The drive home gave me time to think about what I was walking into. Vanna had moved fast, hiring a lawyer before she'd even been officially fired. That suggested planning, preparation, maybe even advanced knowledge that this day was coming. The house felt like a war zone when I walked through the front door. Vanna sat at the dining room table with a man in his 50s wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Sophie hovered in the doorway, looking uncomfortable and trapped. "Mr. Trasker," the lawyer said, standing to shake my hand. "I'm David Chen, representing your wife in this matter. I understand there have been some unfortunate misunderstandings that we might be able to resolve amicably." "What kind of misunderstandings?" "The financial irregularities, the loan situation, the employment issues. My client believes these problems stem from miscommunication and can be addressed without destroying your family." I sat down across from them, feeling like I was entering negotiations with people who thought I was too stupid to understand what was really happening. "What exactly is your client proposing?" Chen opened a leather portfolio and pulled out several documents. Mrs. Trasker is willing to make restitution for any financial irregularities in exchange for your agreement not to pursue criminal charges. She's also prepared to enter marriage counseling to address the communication issues that led to these problems. And in return, you would sign a statement acknowledging that the loan application was based on a misunderstanding, not intentional fraud. You would also agree not to discuss these matters publicly or with her former employer. I looked at Vanna, who was staring at her hands folded on the table. She looked smaller than I remembered, diminished somehow. What about the money she took from my business? That would be part of the restitution, Chen said smoothly. Full repayment plus reasonable interest. And the forged signature? A mistake that will be corrected and acknowledged. What about her job? Unfortunately, that bridge may already be burned, but with your cooperation, we might be able to minimize the professional damage. I leaned back in my chair, studying the two people across from me. They'd worked this out carefully, probably spent hours crafting an offer that sounded reasonable while protecting Vanna from the consequences of her actions. Can I ask you something, Mr. Chen? Of course. How exactly does someone accidentally forge a signature? I'm having trouble understanding the mechanics of that particular mistake. Chen's smile faltered slightly. Emotions were running high. There was pressure to complete the transaction quickly. Shortcuts were taken. Shortcuts like practicing my signature until she could reproduce it convincingly? Mr. Trasker, I think we're getting bogged down in details that aren't productive. Those details are called evidence, and they tell a story about systematic deception, not miscommunication. Vanna finally looked up. Marlow, please. I made mistakes, I admit that. But we can fix this. We can save our marriage, our family. Isn't that worth more than being right? Our marriage ended the moment you decided I was too stupid to notice what you were doing. Our family ended when you chose lies over trust. So that's it? She said, her voice rising. 15 years of marriage, and you're just throwing it away over money? I'm not throwing anything away. You already threw it away. I'm just refusing to pretend it didn't happen. Chen cleared his throat. Mr. Trasker, I should point out that refusing this offer could be costly for you. Divorce proceedings can be expensive and unpredictable. Your wife has legitimate claims to marital assets, including your business. Let me understand this correctly. You're threatening to take my business unless I agree to cover up fraud? I'm pointing out the realities of divorce law. Assets acquired during marriage are generally considered joint property, including assets that one spouse built while the other spouse was stealing from them. That would be for a judge to decide. I stood up, feeling that familiar cold clarity settling over me. Then let's let a judge decide. All of it. The fraud, the theft, the forged documents, and who deserves what when the marriage ends. Marlow, Vanna said desperately, you're making a mistake. We can work this out privately. Keep it in the family. The family? I looked around the room at my wife, her lawyer, and my daughter watching from the doorway. The family ended when you decided everyone in it was too stupid to deserve the truth. I walked toward the door, then turned back. Mr. Chen, your client has until Friday to remove her belongings from this house. After that, I'm changing the locks. You can't do that, Chen protested. She has legal rights. She has the right to find somewhere else to live. She gave up the right to live here when she decided to commit crimes using my name. As I left the house, I could hear Vanna crying and Chen trying to calm her down, explaining legal strategies and court procedures. But all I could think about was how quiet my truck felt compared to the chaos I'd just left behind. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. Dad, are you okay? I typed back, I'm fine. Are you? Confused, scared, but I think you're doing the right thing. Thanks. That means more than you know. I drove to the boxing gym, needing to hit something before the anger in my chest exploded outward. Coach Baines was waiting with gloves and a heavy bag that had absorbed the frustrations of half the men in town. Heard you had visitors, he said, wrapping my hands. News travels fast. Your wife's been making the rounds, telling anyone who will listen that you're having some kind of breakdown. Says you've become obsessed with destroying her. What do you think? I think you've finally stopped letting people walk all over you. Question is, what are you going to do with all that anger? I threw the first punch, feeling the satisfying impact travel up my arm. I'm going to use it. Good. But use it smart. Anger without direction just burns everything down, including you. I spent the next hour working the heavy bag, thinking about Vanna's offer and what it really meant. She wanted me to lie, to cover up her crimes, to pretend our marriage could be saved with counseling and good intentions. She wanted me to be complicit in my own humiliation. But I was done being the understanding husband, the one who made excuses and smoothed things over. I was done pretending that love meant accepting unacceptable behavior. By the time I finished my workout, I knew exactly what came next. The call from Detective Sarah Wells came Tuesday morning while I was reviewing supplier contracts at the store. I'd been expecting it since Saturday night, but hearing her voice still sent a chill down my spine. Mr. Trasker, we need you to come in and give a formal statement about the incident at the Morrison residence. Can you be here this afternoon? What kind of statement? Just your version of events. Standard procedure when fraud allegations are involved. The police station hadn't changed much since I'd last been there 15 years ago to report a break-in at the store. Same fluorescent lights, same institutional green paint, same smell of coffee and disinfectant that seemed to permeate every government building. Detective Wells was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that reminded me of Sophie when she was determined to get to the truth about something. Mr. Trasker, thank you for coming in. I understand you've been having some marital difficulties. That's one way to put it. Walk me through Saturday night. What led to the confrontation at the Morrison house? I told her everything, starting with Vanna's public rejection and ending with my departure while police cars arrived. Wells took notes, occasionally asking for clarification or additional details. You recorded your wife without her knowledge? I recorded a conversation in my own kitchen, perfectly legal. And you had these documents readily available on your phone? I'd been investigating irregularities in our accounts. When I found evidence of fraud, I documented it. How long had you been investigating? About 3 weeks, ever since I noticed discrepancies in the business accounts. Wells leaned back in her chair, studying me. Mr. Trasker, your wife claims this was all a setup, that you deliberately humiliated her as part of some revenge scheme. Detective, if I'd wanted to humiliate her, I would have chosen a more private setting. What happened Saturday night was her choice, not mine. What do you mean? She chose to insult me in front of her friends. I chose to respond with facts instead of insults. Facts that you happen to have ready on your phone. I'm an electrician, Detective. I troubleshoot problems for a living. When I see symptoms of a problem, I investigate until I find the cause. Wells made another note. What's your relationship with Marcus Webb, the man who processed the loan? I'd met him a few times at social events. Seemed like a decent guy until I found out he was facilitating fraud. He claims he had no knowledge that the signature was forged. Then he's either lying or incompetent. Either way, he processed a loan based on documents he should have verified. The bank is conducting its own investigation. They'll determine Mr. Webb's culpability. What about my wife's culpability? That depends on several factors. The district attorney will review the evidence and decide whether to file charges. What kind of charges? Fraud, forgery, embezzlement. Potentially others depending on what the investigation uncovers. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Vanna had brought this on herself, but that didn't make it any easier to watch her life fall apart. Detective, can I ask you something? Sure. In your experience, do people like my wife usually stop with one crime? Or is this part of a pattern? Wells studied me for a moment. Why do you ask? Because I'm wondering how much I still don't know about. After leaving the police station, I drove to Liam's shop to update him on the investigation. I found him working on a transmission, his hands black with grease and his face focused on the mechanical puzzle in front of him. "How'd it go with the cops?" he asked without looking up. "About what you'd expect. They're building a case." "Against Vanna?" "Against everyone involved, including Marcus Webb." Liam straightened up, wiping his hands on a rag. "Marlow, there's something I need to tell you." "What?" "Vanna came by again yesterday, after you left the house. And? She was asking about you, about your state of mind, whether I thought you were dangerous." "Dangerous how?" "She seems to think you're planning something, some kind of revenge beyond just the legal stuff." I laughed, but it came out harder than I'd intended. What kind of revenge could I possibly plan? I'm an electrician, not a criminal mastermind. That's what I told her. But she's scared, Marlow. Really scared. Good. She should be scared. She committed multiple felonies. It's more than that. She's scared of you, of what you might do. The only thing I'm going to do is tell the truth and let the legal system handle the rest. Liam set down his tools and looked at me seriously. "Is it, though? Because you've changed, brother. Since Saturday night, you're different. Harder." "I'm not harder. I'm just not soft anymore." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm done being the nice guy who gets walked all over. I'm done making excuses for people who don't respect me. I'm done pretending that being understanding is the same thing as being weak." "And what are you going to do instead?" "Whatever it takes to protect myself and my daughter from people who think we're too stupid to matter." My phone rang before Liam could respond. Sophie's name flashed on the screen. "Dad, we need to talk. Can you come home?" "What's wrong?" "Just come home, please." I found Sophie sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open, her face pale and her hands shaking slightly. "What's going on?" "I've been going through Mom's social media accounts. Her emails, her text messages, everything I could access. Sophie, that's probably not—" "Dad, sit down. You need to see this." She turned the laptop toward me, showing a series of text messages between Vanna and someone named Jay. "Who's Jay?" "Jennifer Morrison, Mom's friend who hosted the party." I went through the messages, feeling my tension build with every exchange. Vanna: "Marlow's getting suspicious about the money. Need to move faster on the exit strategy." Jay: "How much does he know?" Vanna: "Not sure. He's been asking questions about the business accounts." Jay: "Maybe it's time to cut our losses, take what we can and run." Vanna: "Not yet. The big score's too close. One more month and we'll have enough to disappear completely." Jay: "What if he finds out before then?" Vanna: "He won't. He's too trusting, too stupid to see what's right in front of him." The messages continued for weeks, detailing plans to drain my business accounts, forge additional documents, and eventually disappear with enough money to start over somewhere else. "There's more," Sophie said, scrolling to another conversation. "Look at this one." This exchange was between Vanna and Marcus Webb, but it wasn't about loans. It was about a relationship that had been going on for months, complete with hotel reservations and plans for weekend getaways. "She's been cheating on you, Dad, with Marcus Webb." I stared at the screen, watching my marriage disintegrate in real time. The woman I'd loved for 15 years, the mother of my child, had been planning to rob me blind and disappear with her lover. "How long have you known?" I asked. "I just found this stuff today. I was trying to understand why Mom was acting so crazy, so I started digging." "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you need to know what you're really dealing with. This wasn't just some mistake or misunderstanding. This was a plan." I closed the laptop and sat back in my chair, trying to process what I'd just learned. The fraud, the forged signature, the stolen money. It was all part of a larger scheme to rob me of everything I'd worked for. "Dad, are you okay?" "I'm fine. You don't look fine." I'm just trying to figure out how I could have been so blind. You weren't blind. You trusted someone you loved. That's not a character flaw. It is when that someone is planning to destroy your life. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanna. We need to talk. Meet me at Murphy's at 8. Come alone. I showed the message to Sophie. What do you think? I think she knows that I found the messages. I think she's panicking. Should I go? Only if you want to hear more lies. But I was curious about what Vanna thought she could say that would change anything. After what I'd just learned, what possible explanation could she offer? Murphy's tavern was nearly empty when I arrived at 8 o'clock. Vanna sat in a corner booth, nursing a glass of wine and looking like she hadn't slept in days. She'd aged years in the past week, her face drawn and her eyes hollow. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down across from her. What do you want, Vanna? I want to explain, to tell you the truth about everything. The truth? That's a new concept for you. She flinched, but continued. I know you found the messages. Sophie told me she'd been going through my accounts. So you know that I know about Marcus, about the plan to rob me and disappear. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? We were going to tell you. Eventually, when we'd figured out how to do it without destroying everyone. You were going to tell me that you'd been planning to steal my life savings and run away with your lover? How considerate. I was going to ask for a divorce, clean, simple, no drama. After you'd stolen everything I owned. The money was as much mine as yours. 15 years of marriage, I helped build that business. By embezzling from it? She started crying, but these weren't the calculated tears from before. These were the broken sobs of someone whose world had completely collapsed. I never meant for it to go this far, she said. It started small, just borrowing a little money here and there for expenses. But then Marcus and I got involved, and suddenly there were possibilities I'd never imagined. Possibilities like what? Like being with someone who understood my ambitions, who didn't think I was reaching too high or wanting too much. So this is my fault for not being ambitious enough? It's nobody's fault. It's just, we grew apart. We wanted different things. I wanted honesty. You wanted to commit felonies. Yeah, we definitely wanted different things. Marlow, please. I know I screwed up, but we can still fix this. We can work something out that doesn't destroy both our lives. Your life is already destroyed, Vanna. You lost your job, you're facing criminal charges, and your lover is probably going to prison. What exactly is left to fix? Our daughter. Sophie needs both her parents, not two people who hate each other. Sophie needs parents who tell her the truth. She needs to know that actions have consequences and that love doesn't mean accepting unacceptable behavior. And what about forgiveness? What about second chances? You used up your second chances when you decided to forge my signature. You used up forgiveness when you planned to rob me blind. I stood up to leave, but she grabbed my arm. Marlow, wait. There's something else you need to know. What? Marcus isn't the only one. There have been others. I sat back down, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. How many others? Does it matter? It matters to me. 3, maybe 4, over the past 2 years. Anyone I know? Does that matter too? Answer the question. David Chen, my lawyer. I stared at her, trying to process this latest revelation. You're sleeping with your divorce attorney? It's not like that. It just happened. When did it just happen? Yesterday, after the meeting at the house. I felt that cold clarity settling over me again, but this time it was different. This time it felt like ice water in my veins. So while you were asking me to forgive you and save our marriage, you were planning to sleep with your lawyer. I was upset, confused. I needed comfort. You needed to manipulate another man into helping you destroy me. That's not what happened. That's exactly what happened. You've been using intimacy as leverage for years, haven't you? getting close to Marcus for financial help, getting close to Chen for legal help, and getting close to anyone else who could give you what you wanted. She didn't deny it, which was answer enough. I stood up again, feeling strangely calm. Thank you for telling me the truth. Finally. What are you going to do? I'm going to finish what you started. What does that mean? It means you wanted to destroy our marriage and take everything I've built. Congratulations. You've succeeded in destroying the marriage, but you're not taking anything else. I left her sitting in the booth, crying into her wine, and walked out into the cool October night. My phone was already buzzing with messages, but I ignored them. I had planning to do. The war Vanna had started was about to end, but not the way she'd expected. Wednesday morning brought news that changed everything. Pete called me at 6 a.m., his voice tight with urgency. Boss, you need to get down here, now. What's wrong? Someone broke into the warehouse last night, took the computers, the backup drives, all the financial records. I was dressed and in my truck within 5 minutes. The warehouse looked like a tornado had hit it. Filing cabinets overturned, papers scattered everywhere, the safe cracked open and emptied. But it wasn't random vandalism. Someone had known exactly what they were looking for. Any idea who did this? I asked Pete as we surveyed the damage. Security camera caught a car around midnight, but the license plate was covered. Looked like a sedan, maybe dark blue or black. I thought about David Chen's BMW, parked outside my house yesterday. Dark blue sedan with tinted windows. Did they get everything? All the physical records, yeah. But I've been backing up the digital files to the cloud for months. They got the computers, but not the data. You beautiful genius. Can you access the cloud backup? Already did. Everything's intact. While Pete worked on restoring our files, I called Detective Wells to report the break-in. She arrived within an hour, taking photos and asking questions that suggested she already suspected this wasn't a random crime. Mr. Trasker, given the timing of this break-in and your ongoing legal issues, I have to ask, do you think this is connected? Someone wanted to destroy evidence of financial crimes. You tell me if that's connected. Any idea who might have access to information about your record-keeping systems? My wife knew our filing system. Her lawyer would know what kind of records might be damaging in a divorce proceeding. We'll investigate. In the meantime, I'd recommend increasing security here. After Wells left, I sat in my destroyed office and tried to think like someone who was desperate enough to commit burglary. Vanna and her accomplices had made a critical error. They'd assumed I was still the trusting fool who wouldn't see through their schemes. They had no idea I'd been 3 steps ahead of them for weeks. My phone rang. Sophie's name appeared on the screen. Dad, where are you? There are police cars at the house. What kind of police cars? Detectives, I think. They want to search Mom's things. Let them. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I found Sophie standing in the driveway, watching 2 detectives carry boxes of documents and computer equipment out of the house. Detective Wells supervised the search, checking items against a warrant that probably covered everything Vanna owned. What did they find? I asked. Lots of papers, Mom's laptop, some external hard drives hidden in her closet, Sophie said. She's been storing stuff here that she didn't want found. Where is she now? Jennifer Morrison's house. But Dad, there's something else. What? I found this in her car. Sophie handed me a manila folder containing plane tickets, bank account information, and what looked like a new identity package. Driver's license, social security card, even a passport, all in the name of Victoria Thorne. She was really going to disappear, Sophie said quietly. When? The tickets are for Friday. One way to Miami, then a connecting flight to somewhere in South America. I stared at the documents, feeling the last pieces of the puzzle click into place. Vanna hadn't just been stealing money. She'd been planning to vanish completely, leaving me to deal with the legal consequences of her crimes. Dad, what are we going to do? We're going to make sure she doesn't get on that plane. Detective Wells approached us, carrying a box of evidence. Mr. Trasker, we found some interesting items in your wife's possession. Fake identification documents, travel itineraries, and about $50,000 in cash. Flight risk? Definitely. We'll be issuing a warrant for her arrest within the hour. What charges? Fraud, embezzlement, identity theft, and now burglary. The evidence from your warehouse break-in points directly to her and her associates. My phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I answered cautiously. Marlow, it's Marcus Webb. We need to talk. I don't think we have anything to discuss. Yes, we do. About Vanna, about the money, about everything that's been happening. What about it? Meet me at the old grain elevator on Route 9. 1 hour. Come alone. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, you're never going to understand what really happened, and because Vanna's life might depend on it. I stared at the phone, trying to decide if this was another trap or a genuine attempt to resolve things. Who was that? Sophie asked. Marcus Webb. He wants to meet. Dad, don't. This feels like a setup. Maybe, but I need to hear what he has to say. The grain elevator had been abandoned for 20 years, a rusting monument to the agricultural economy that had once sustained our town. Marcus's car was already there when I arrived, parked in the shadow of the massive concrete structure. I found him sitting on the hood of his BMW, smoking a cigarette with shaking hands. He looked like he'd aged a decade since Saturday night. Thank you for coming, he said. Talk. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, none of it. What was it supposed to be? A simple financial arrangement. Vanna needed money, I needed tax write-offs. The loan was legitimate, just processed informally. With a forged signature. I didn't know the signature was forged. She told me you'd approved it verbally. And you believed her? I wanted to believe her. I was in love with her. Were you in love with her? Or with the idea of taking something that belonged to someone else? Marcus dropped his cigarette and crushed it under his heel. Both, probably. She made me feel like I was rescuing her from a life she didn't deserve. What life? A marriage to someone who loved her? A family that supported her? A business that provided for her? A small-town life with limited possibilities. She had bigger dreams. Dreams that required stealing and fraud? Dreams that required taking risks. Sometimes those risks cross legal lines. I studied his face, looking for signs of deception or manipulation. Instead, I saw something I hadn't expected. Genuine remorse. Why did you call me here, Marcus? Because Vanna's planning something desperate, something that's going to get people hurt. What kind of something? She thinks you've been planning this whole thing for months, that you set her up deliberately, recorded her conversations, planted evidence, manipulated the situation to destroy her. That's ridiculous. Is it? Because from where she's sitting, everything fell apart too perfectly. The timing, the evidence, the public humiliation, it all seems coordinated. The only thing I coordinated was my response to her crimes. She doesn't see it that way. She thinks you're some kind of criminal mastermind who's been playing a long game. What does that have to do with people getting hurt? She's convinced that you're not going to stop with the legal proceedings, that you're planning some kind of personal revenge. Like what? I don't know, but she's scared enough to do something stupid. Such as? She's been talking about making you pay for destroying her life, about teaching you what real consequences look like. A chill ran down my spine. Are you saying she's planning to hurt me? I'm saying she's desperate, irrational, and surrounded by people who are telling her that violence might be her only option. What people? Jennifer Morrison for one, David Chen for another. They've convinced her that you're some kind of sociopath who won't stop until she's completely destroyed. And you believe that? I think you're a man who's been pushed too far and has finally decided to stand up for himself. But I also believe you're not capable of something that extreme. Of course I'm not. I'm an electrician who discovered his wife doing something seriously wrong. Then help me stop her from doing something that can't be undone. How? Meet with her. Tonight. Let her see that you're not the monster she thinks you are. Where? The lake house on Route 12. Jennifer Morrison's place, 8 o'clock. That sounds like a trap. Maybe it is. But if you don't show up, she's going to assume you're planning something worse, and then she really might do something desperate. I thought about Sophie, about the life I was trying to rebuild, about the possibility that my refusal to meet might escalate this situation beyond anyone's control. I'll be there, I said. But Marcus? Yeah? If this is a setup, if anything happens to me, Detective Wells has copies of everything. Every document, every recording, every piece of evidence that proves what really happened. It's not a setup. It's a last chance to end this without anyone getting hurt. I drove home through the gathering dusk, my mind racing through possibilities and contingencies. Sophie was waiting in the kitchen, her face tight with worry. How did it go? Your mother wants to meet tonight, to discuss ending this situation. Dad, please don't go. This feels wrong. It feels wrong because it is wrong. But if I don't go, things might get worse. How could they get worse? Your mother is desperate, Sophie. Desperate people do unpredictable things. Then let the police handle it. The police can't fix 15 years of marriage that went bad. Some things you have to handle yourself. I spent the next hour making preparations, copying files, sending emails to Detective Wells with detailed timelines, and writing a letter to Sophie explaining everything I'd discovered and why I'd made the choices I'd made. Dad, you're scaring me. I'm just being careful. Probably nothing will happen, but I want you to know the truth about everything. I already know the truth. Mom's a liar and a thief, and you're the only honest person in this whole mess. It's more complicated than that. No, it's not. She made choices, and now she has to live with the consequences. At 7:30, I kissed my daughter goodbye and drove toward what I hoped would be the final confrontation with the woman who had once been the center of my world. The lake house sat on a bluff overlooking the water, a modern structure of glass and steel that Jennifer Morrison had inherited from her parents. Lights glowed in the windows, and I could see several cars parked in the driveway. This was definitely not going to be a private conversation. I parked next to a car I didn't recognize and walked toward the front door, wondering if I was walking into an ambush or just another round of lies and manipulation. Either way, it was time to finish what Vanna had started. The front door opened before I could knock. Jennifer Morrison stood there, her face pale and her hands shaking. Marlow, thank you for coming. She's in the living room. The house was full of people I recognized. David Chen, Marcus Webb, 2 other men I'd seen at various social functions, and Vanna, sitting in the center of the room like a defendant awaiting verdict. What is this? I asked. An intervention, Chen said. We're here to discuss how to resolve this situation before it gets any worse. Worse for whom? For everyone involved. I looked around the room at the assembled faces, seeing fear, anger, and desperation in various combinations. Let me guess, I said. You all have something to lose if the truth comes out. We all have something to gain if we can reach a reasonable settlement, Chen replied smoothly. What kind of settlement? Vanna stood up, looking like she'd been crying for hours. Marlow, I'm sorry. For everything. For the lying, the stealing, the cheating, all of it. I know I destroyed our marriage, and I know you'll never forgive me. You're right about that. But I'm asking you to have mercy, to let me disappear quietly without pressing charges, without destroying everyone who got caught up in this mess. Everyone who chose to get caught up in this mess. Please, I'll give back every penny I took. I'll sign any divorce papers you want. I'll disappear and never contact you or Sophie again. Just let me go. I looked at her, this woman I'd loved for 15 years, and tried to find some trace of the person I'd married. But all I saw was a stranger who'd been wearing my wife's face, while planning to destroy my life. No, I said simply. Marlow, Marcus said, be reasonable. Sending her to prison won't get your money back. It won't repair your marriage. It won't accomplish anything except revenge. It will accomplish justice. It will show my daughter that actions have consequences. It will prevent Vanna from doing this to someone else. You self-righteous bastard, Jennifer Morrison said suddenly. You think you're so much better than everyone else, but you're just a small-minded man who can't handle the fact that his wife outgrew him. His wife became a criminal. His wife tried to build something better than the pathetic life he offered her. By committing fraud? By taking risks that small people like you could never understand. I looked around the room again, seeing the truth clearly for the first time. These weren't Vanna's friends trying to help her. These were her accomplices trying to save themselves. How much did you all steal? I asked. We didn't steal anything, Chen protested. Jennifer, you helped plan the whole thing. Marcus, you processed fraudulent loans. Chen, you're probably planning to bill me for legal services while sleeping with my wife. What's your cut of the money? The silence that followed was answer enough. Marlow, Vanna said desperately, if you don't agree to let this go, people are going to get hurt. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. Some of the people involved in this aren't as reasonable as I am. What people? People who have a lot to lose if this goes to trial. People who might decide that eliminating the witness is easier than facing the consequences. I felt that ice water clarity settle over me one final time. Are you saying that if I don't drop the charges, someone might try to harm me? I'm saying that desperate people do desperate things. I pulled out my phone and hit the speed dial for Detective Wells. Detective, it's Marlow Trasker. I'm at the Morrison Lake House, and I've just been threatened by my wife and her accomplices. I think you should send some units out here. We're already on our way. Wells' voice came through the speaker loud enough for everyone to hear. We've been listening to the whole conversation through the wire you're wearing. The room erupted in chaos as everyone realized they'd just confessed to multiple crimes while being recorded by police. Jennifer Morrison tried to run for the back door, but found it blocked by officers who'd been positioned around the house. Marcus Webb sat down heavily, his face in his hands. David Chen started shouting about entrapment and illegal surveillance. Vanna just stared at me with a mixture of hatred and admiration. You really did plan this whole thing, she said. I planned to get justice for what you did to me and my daughter. Everything else was just you and your friends making bad choices. As the police led them away in handcuffs, I stood on the deck of the lake house, looking out over the dark water and thinking about the strange turns life can take. 3 weeks ago, I'd been a trusting husband who believed in the goodness of people. Tonight, I was a man who'd learned that sometimes the people you love most are capable of the worst betrayals. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. Dad, are you okay? The news is saying there were arrests at the lake house. I typed back, I'm fine. Coming home now. It's over. All of it? All of it. As I drove home through the quiet streets of my small town, I realized that for the first time in years, I felt truly free. Free from lies, free from manipulation, free from the exhausting work of pretending that my marriage was something it had never really been. The house was warm and welcoming when I walked through the front door. Sophie was waiting in the living room, and when she hugged me, I knew that whatever came next, we'd face it together. So what happens now? She asked. Now we figure out how to build a life based on truth instead of lies. Sounds good to me. Outside, the October wind rattled the windows, but inside, everything was finally quiet. The war was over, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I'd won something worth keeping.